You are listening to the Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZWLP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rick Schissler. I'm a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of OneBestConsult.com. And I want to welcome you to this edition of the Weekly Business Hour. I think we put together a good show for you today, so I hope you'll sit back, grab a pad and pen, or perhaps your computer, and take some notes, because we're going to talk about everything business right here on the Weekly Business Hour. And as usual, we're broadcasting live from the studios of Lone Star Community Radio, located in downtown Conroe, the fastest growing small city in the country. And that, ladies and gentlemen, means there's a lot of business going on right here in our own backyard. You know, the Weekly Business Hour over the last 8 years has become the place where Montgomery County and through the internet, businesses all over the world come to talk about business. They look for ideas to improve your business and be part of that conversation, which we hope will make a real difference in your business. We'll remind you that the show is being broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube. So if you just go to YouTube or Facebook and click on the Weekly Business Hour page and then click on live, then you can watch as well as listen to the conversations that we're going to have today. Also want to remind you, as I try to do every week, use the email, please. If you see something about the show, you've got a comment about it, or you've got a question for myself, a guest, and if you have a general business question, maybe the topic's not being discussed today, I'd love to get those kind of questions in. It's what I do for a living. I mentor and advise small businesses, so I look for their interaction, and let me tell you, our mailbag, we get a lot of very interesting and sometimes challenging questions. So use that email. It's real simple. Send it to that's the number one, bestconsult@gmail.com. That's bestconsult@gmail.com. Well, at this point, we go to the show. That's why you're here. We've got a wonderful guest in the studio today. He's written a very, very interesting book, and we're going to talk about it and how it applies to business. Probably applies to your business. So hopefully you can pick up some ideas, some tips, some things that you can use in your business, and perhaps even purchase a copy of that book and read it. In the studio, we have Dan Prosser. Dan is the author of a multi-week Amazon bestseller. His book, The 13ers, Why Only 13% of Companies Successfully Execute Their Strategy and How Yours Can Be One of Them. Boy, that's a mouthful. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate being here.
But it's a great title. You know, Dan, you spent over 45 years and built up 3 businesses and sold them. And you've taken that knowledge and put it to good use, I think, in writing a book and trying to help businesses do the kind of things they need to do and join the 13%, I guess you'd say. Tell us a little bit firsthand about what you did in your career business-wise, and so folks get an idea of who Dan Prosser really is.
Sure. Thank you very much. I really appreciate being here, Rick. The thing that as I look back, we could spend the whole hour talking about this. It's been an adventure. I keep looking back at the different things that have happened. I started my first business after I had worked for my father. It was a temporary help business, we called it back then, kind of a fractional light industrial. I was 26. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just thought, hey, I think I can do this, which I think a lot of people do. You're good at something, you start a business, and then you find out what's really going on. And so the first lessons that I learned was how to have a successful failure. So this business took off, and it from the first day. And because I found a weakness in the system, per se, it was there was a problem in getting into companies who actually needed light industrial help at peak times, and the only thing they could do is go and find people off the street. So by providing something that was above that, I required my temporary employees to be able to have a car. I set myself apart. So what I did was I think I fell into this. I didn't have some miraculous thoughts about this. I actually saw this weakness, but I wasn't really thinking about that I saw a weakness. And I'll tell you, my book is a lot about this because businesses that are successful, and this business was successful, except that I didn't know anything about capital. So what I did was I started a business on, $5,000? And I ended up with 250 employees being paid every week, which, I had to sign 250 checks every week, so I got a cramp in my hand every week. But it really took off. It just needed someone with capital, so I had to sell that business. It paid off because it was during the Carter administration, and during those days they paid $1 tax benefit for every additional dollar in payroll that year. So
Right.
that was a really great experience. I went into the telecom business after that. So I looked to see what was going on, and I wasn't aware that I was looking at weaknesses again, but weaknesses in the telecom area. So we were selling telephone systems back then. I got a number of years of experience selling telecom. I was offered a job to be a telecom manager. I was putting in a system in Houston, and I got an offer to interview for a job here in Houston. I did. They hired me. They moved me, and I went to sell telephone systems to big companies like Union Carbide down at the Seadrift plant. And so I saw this weakness again, and I got into telecommunications management, fractional management again, in which I came in and I became the telecom manager for these different companies that didn't know how to buy the technology and didn't know what to do with it. So there was another weakness. But again, I wasn't seeing this, except that I had presented my idea to a professor at the University of Houston, and he said, you've got to get out there and do this because there are 8 other people at least who see the same thing, and they're going to be in this business. I thought, 8 other people? So for years I thought, 8 other people. So I went into this business of providing telecom management, primarily for hotels, it ended up being. And some of these hotels were making millions of dollars on telephone services from their guests. So I expanded that business, and that started in '85. And then in '95, I was approached by a guy here in Houston, actually approached when I was at a Washington, D.C. conference. And he said, I've got this software, and you're set up to take this, and people want it, and why don't I sell it to you? So I bought it, and I started a software company in parallel with my telecom, and again to the hotel industry, and it provided a solution to a weakness. Again, this weakness idea, so what we saw was in business, especially in hotels, and this is true of all businesses, you get a P&L in the middle of the month, following the month, 15 days.
Right.
So you're 45 days from the beginning of the month. So anytime during that time, you could have a problem, and you don't know about it until the 15th of the following month. So what we did was we created software where we could capture the data that came out of the back of these systems that were in these hotels, and then we restructured it and sold their data back to them in a different format. I mean, it was too brilliant even for me to, it was like, I think back to it, it was really brilliant. But here's the thing that I think is important about this is that these weaknesses, they occur in business, but people don't see them. So because they're not thinking about this. But there's actually a name that I discovered finally in the late 90s. It's called a reverse salient. And it's a military term, and it applies to business because in terms of when it was created, the terminology was created at the Battle of Verdun. The Germans and the French were fighting, and the French took advantage of the German weaknesses in their system and surrounded them, and that was the end of that. So this occurs in business everywhere. You can even look in the past. You can look at Edison and how he came up with what? Everybody says he came up with the light bulb. Well, he didn't. So there's a guy by the name of Humphrey Davis that actually invented the light bulb in 1800. Edison wasn't born until 1847, and it wasn't until 1879 that the incandescent light bulb was created by Edison, not the bulb, the filament. That was the weakness in the system. So you can find these weaknesses in systems, and if you build your business around it, it becomes a very powerful, saleable concept. And then, we're not building businesses anymore. We're building categories. So you have to find a category. That's what makes a strong business today. It's fascinating to watch, and it's fascinating to bring into companies because nobody's ever thought about this.
Well, you mentioned the weakness aspect, and that is there are a lot of good businesses, particularly service businesses, that spring up, in my opinion, because someone identifies a weakness.
Yeah.
Because I find it difficult myself to sit back and try to compare apples to apples. In other words, if I'm going to be in this business, this industry, this category, however you want to style it, and I'm going to compete head on, you've got to have, that proposition, what makes you different, and so on and so forth. But this is really a step back from that.
Yeah.
And something that I have had a lot of fun with. I worked in several of the businesses I started. Our weakness that we attacked was administrative services, administering the back end, not only the accounting, but the insurance and all, 10-15% of the statement costs, depending on the industry. And we could do it very efficiently, effectively, and hopefully pick up 5-6% extra profit by doing that. And also putting processes in place for revenue generation, so on and so forth. So it was a backroom operation. But I think that there's a lot of money for folks to make. The young people, the young entrepreneurs, whether that's age-driven or not, they're looking for the next great Facebook.
Isn't that true?
And that's wonderful. We need the innovators, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But there's lots of opportunity out there every day, like you intimated, for people just to attack the weaknesses in an industry, a system, wherever it might be. And I've done some business plan competitions and whatnot, and I'm always intrigued. I don't know if you have with some of the ideas people have attacking weaknesses in the most mundane industries. Very successful ideas, as it turns out. So very, very neat that you did that. So you had 40 plus years of experience in dealing with weakness.
I have, and the thing that I've also found is that the majority of businesses today are commodities. So there's a lot of commoditization and there's no differentiation. So to create that differentiation, you have to find a category. So you have to create a category and you have to promote that category. And it's a category, not a business you're selling. It's been fun. I didn't know what I was doing most of the time until I started studying it. And it wasn't until I sold my businesses that I actually could see how I could begin to bring that into other companies, and it's been very successful. It's been it's been fun. I mean, you can't complain at all.
Well, one thing that I'm curious about with 40 plus years of working in something that had several businesses, and right now, in fact, we're going through a big discussion on this radio program. We've had several outstanding nationally recognized guests talking about the exit from the business, the sale, the transfer. And in fact, May, we have a whole series, a 4-part show of walking through the steps and how to successfully exit your business. Your last business was the software business?
Well, I had the software and telecom business
So they were together.
Yeah, side by side. I sold them both in the same week at the end of 2001 to 2 companies up in Dallas.
What motivated you to sell, though? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, I think I had gotten to the point where I was seeing the limitation on the telecom because things were beginning to change. And a company wanted my name, because my name was highly recognized, not my name personally, but the name of the company, was highly recognized in the industry, so they could leverage it. The other company was not really a competitor, but somebody who needed an adjacency as a company. So they needed to add it in order to expand their marketplace so they could hit more people and then bring their other business in, which was a survey business.
So you were motivated primarily, what you saw was a change in the market.
Yeah, and I was ready, and I wanted to do something else, and I didn't know what. And so I sold them, and I started traveling up to Dallas. I told them that I wouldn't move to Dallas. I'm like rooted in Houston, and I love Texas. can't imagine anybody not. But I met this guy up there on one of the meetings. He came in to talk to the guy that I sold to, and I met him, and he said that he was doing surveys for best places to work. And so I sat and talked with him for a little while. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come and go to the luncheon with me in Houston, to the best places to work luncheon?" So I met him at that and as his guest, and we sat in the back of the room, and people would get up and they would talk about why they're best places to work. And I turned to him and I said, "You know what? These people don't know why they're best places to work. They don't really know. They just think it's doing a barbecue out the back door, or the CEO knows everybody's name, or I don't know, they do parties or whatever it is." But they really didn't identify what it was that was really going on. And that's what started me really looking at that. And he gave me 2 years worth of surveys one day. He was out of Temecula, California. And I said, "Why don't we find out why these companies don't make best places to work?" He went in the back room, pulled out about a foot stack of green bar paper and handed it to me and said, "Haul that back to Houston and find out." So for 2 years, I researched and interviewed people as to what was going on in these companies, and why weren't these other companies making it.
Right. Well, are you going to share the answer? But hold that,
Yeah,
because we need to take a break.
Yeah, I was hoping.
And ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, Dan's going to share the answer of what it takes to be considered a best place to work. That should be interesting to everyone listening to this program. So please stay with us, and we'll be right back with you.
Remember to download the Lone Star Community Radio app from your Google Play Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM 104.5, 106.1. If you are on your computer, bookmark irlonestar.com as your internet radio station. Lone Star Community Radio, broadcasting 24/7 from the heart of downtown Conroe, Texas.
Second Saturday Divorce Workshop provides unbiased information to help you understand your options and move forward with your life. This divorce workshop is for you if you are contemplating divorce, in the process of divorce, already filed for divorce, or post-divorce. You will explore the emotional, legal, and financial aspects of divorce from professionals who have guided others through divorce. For more information on this divorce workshop, contact secondsaturdaywoodlands.com or call 832-375-0900.
Hey y'all, it's DJ Mike from Dance Time in Texas. Join me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. as I count down the top 10 Texas Red Dirt songs that are packing the dance floor. I'll be featuring local artists and the story behind the hits, shows in the area, as well as new songs that make you want to dance. It's Dance Time in Texas with DJ Mike on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 KCZW and 106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
Vell Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit, began in 2014 with a mission to strengthen the future of veterans through leadership and entrepreneurship training. We've invested over 1,400 hours of training in our veterans while connecting them with community entrepreneurs and leaders. Our mission is to continue investing in our veterans who have given so much for our country. Please join us in our mission by visiting vellinstitute.org. That's VELinstitute.org.
Well, you're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler. I'm your host, and appreciate you joining us today. And I want to remind you that if you're listening to the program and you own a business, particularly in the Montgomery County area, that you can be a sponsor of the show. Yes, the radio station is a nonprofit entity, but you can be a sponsor. Love to feature your business on our show. Real simple. If you're interested, just send me an email at onebestconsult@gmail.com. That's onebestconsult@gmail.com. I'll send you some information back, and I would deeply appreciate it if you would consider sponsoring the Weekly Business Hour. Well, we're having a conversation today with Dan Prosser, who is the author of 13ers. I love that title, Dan, 13ers. Why only 13% of the company successfully execute their strategy and how you can be one of them. Your company can join that. And we're going to get into talking about the particulars of the book shortly. But before we do, Dan, we left everybody hanging on their chair when we went to break of what you found after 2 years of research into literally a mound of data as far as what is it that people look for as a best place to work.
Okay, well, here's the thing that I discovered was that best place to work companies, by and large, this was discovered, I'm trying to remember now who did this research, but they do 3.2 times the revenue of a non-best place to work company.
Wow.
Which is kind of significant. And so the research I did, independent research for myself, was that, what is it about these companies? So I had been on the board of an organization called Imago, I-M-A-G-O, Imago Relationship International, which is an organization started by a man by the name of Dr. Harville Hendricks. And being on his board, I had also done his work, and so it gave me kind of an insight into human beings and how human beings operate together. So a lot of non-best places to work are they don't treat people. So it's easier to start with, well, what isn't the best place to work? So if you're looking at people as if they're not human, or you objectivize them, you tend to have a more difficult time running an organization. There's a lot of that goes on. I went into non-best places to work to interview people, and I was appalled at how people felt treated. And they say, people who quit don't quit the company, they quit the manager. So there's a lot of people who think hierarchically. They want to manage top down. They want to tell people what to do. And it doesn't work. It, by and large, is a real showstopper for companies that, they go into business, they think they're going to make a lot of money, and they have a great idea, but then they can't hire the right people, or they can't keep the right people. They have high turnover. So I guess that didn't really surprise me all that much. But I also knew from my own experience that my employees really liked working for the companies that I had, and I had the right kind of managers working with me. And we did some really creative things and really tried to make it a nice place to work. And the key was, and I didn't realize this until I went back and started looking at best places to work companies, the key was that I allowed people to contribute to what the direction of the company and how we were going to get there. Okay, so, I didn't have all the thinking going on. I just was trying to be, collaborative with people. But the one thing I discovered was that in companies that are really performing well as a best place to work, for example, is that the owner of the company or the CEO is what I call contributable. Like contributable CEOs have more participation, and people feel like they're contributing to something that's meaningful. So it's a meaningful experience. It's something that people feel they can't find anyplace else, or they've had a bad experience someplace else, and now they're in these companies where people actually have respect for them, and they don't treat them like objects.
That's one of the things that I happen to believe very deeply that small business people miss, small business owners and managers, because it's a small business. And lots of times, as you well know, small businesses, 60, 70% of the time are started by people who have an expertise in what they're selling, building, whatever. Yeah. And they don't really have any management training or any real experience, except maybe if they work for a large company and they got some, but they come into these things with their eyes not really wide open to the possibilities of doing what you say, because people want to belong, right? Yeah. That's a basic human characteristic. And to see that when you have a business that you will attract and keep good people just by allowing them, as use your word, contribute, belonging, making things happen. And that's not everybody, but a vast majority of people in my personal experience. What is the one thing that you might tell a small business owner as they're starting out and they have a handful of employees, 3, 4, 5, 10 employees, but they really have a great vision. They really have the horsepower to build the business and the capital, right?
Yeah.
To build the business. What would be the one thing you tell them to do in this particular area so they can become a best place to work?
Well, the first thing I'd say to them is that what you say and what you do in and of itself is really insufficient to make a difference in the world. So what makes a difference is who are you being for other people. So if you build a business, and like you said, people are good at something, so they start a business. I mean, you remember the E-Myth back in the 80s? Was it the 80s? It was a great book.
Long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago. But, you know, he kind of coined the idea of that technologists start businesses quite a bit. But those people end up with commoditized businesses. And until you sit down and you can take a commoditized business, you can change it. But what you say and what you do is insufficient to make a difference. It's who you're being for yourself. It starts with you, who you're being for yourself. Who are you being for the people in your company? And then who are you being for your clients, for your marketplace? And who you're being is not something that you just fall into. It's a declaration. But before you can get there, okay, you have to know what got you here, what got you to where you are now. And there's another term for that. It's called the hidden context. So all companies have this background conversation going in their business. I talk about this in the book. You know, that there's a hidden context. It's a conversation that runs in the background that undermines and sabotages people's performance. And it's this hidden context that's so very important. And what I've observed is that advisors, for the most part, have skipped over that part because it's not something that people know a lot about. But knowing what got you here will help you in understanding your thinking, and then how you got here is the past. So most people have the past running their companies. So how can you shift that? Well, you've got to declare yourself as a future. I know that sounds weird, okay? So when you declare yourself, you're actually declaring out loud to each other who you are for the world. I mean, it could be that big, okay? And what I want my clients to do is I want them to stand in that future, not stand in the past and try to figure out how to get to that future, because those incremental steps are only past informed. So what are you creating? Every step of the way, you're just recreating the past. And so it's why people say, well, you know, my future looks like my past. Everything looks like we've already been there. So when you create a future, when you declare a future, because futures can only be declared, you're actually creating a leading indicator versus a lagging indicator of the past, how you've been operating in the past. So it's a interesting concept, and it's also an interesting process to take people through. And when you look back from the future, you can ask yourself a very different question than how do I get there? I can ask the question, well, how did we get here? Or I can say, what's missing that if it wasn't missing, in reality, I'd be here at this future that I've just declared. So it's a very different approach. But I think it's becoming less and less, out there. It's more and more out there. It's less and less.
I kind of feel like I'm in that movie Back to the Future, right?
Yeah.
But no, it makes a lot of sense, and I hope people pick up on that, because I do. Folks get grounded too much in the past. The past history is important for lessons we can learn, but we've got to apply them forward in different ways, because the future, right, is always different. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a break. And Dan, we're still not talking about the book yet.
No, we haven't.
So if you don't mind, please stick around.
I will.
And we'll get into the book, because I think the book has a lot of interesting aspects to it that people, I believe, should read this book, particularly if they own a business. So please stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back with you.
Don't forget to download the Lone Star Community Radio app from your Google Play or Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM. That's Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1. If you are on the computer, bookmark irlonestar.com as your internet radio station. A Lone Star Community Radio, broadcasting 24/7 from the heart of downtown Conroe, Texas.
The Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service has been dedicated to educating Texans for over a century. In 1915, the Extension Program was established under the federal Smith-Lever Act to deliver university knowledge and agricultural research findings directly to the people. Ever since, AgriLife Extension programs have addressed the emerging issues of the day, serving diverse populations across the state. Texans turn to Extension for solutions in horticulture, agriculture, 4-H and youth, and family and consumer sciences. Extension agents respond not only with answers, but also with resources and services that result in significant returns on investment to boost the economy. Join us Fridays at 1 o'clock for the AgriLife Extension Hour.
God's Garage is a 501c3 that repairs and gives away cars for free to single moms, widows, and wives of deployed military. You can help God's Garage by donating a vehicle, volunteering your time, or by monetary donation. God's Garage is located at 2106 East Davis, Conroe. If you'd like to learn more about God's Garage, visit our website at godsgarage.org. Or you can contact us and we would be glad to come and make a presentation to your group.
Vell Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit, began in 2014 with a mission to strengthen the future of veterans through leadership and entrepreneurship training. We've invested over 1,400 hours of training in our veterans while connecting them with community entrepreneurs and leaders. Our mission is to continue investing in our veterans who have given so much for our country. Please join us in our mission by visiting vellinstitute.org. That's velinstitute.org.
You are listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schissler. I'm your host. Thank you again for joining us today. We've been having, I think, a wonderful, very in-depth conversation with Dan Prosser today. Dan has written a book, 13ers. I'll use that brief title versus why only 13% of the companies successfully execute their strategy and how yours can be one of them. Well, you know, Dan, you came on the show. We're going to talk about the book, but we've talked about everything but I think some very interesting topics. And folks, if you didn't catch all of the first half of the show, I encourage you, Wednesday of this week, the show will be posted in its entirety, and I encourage you to go back and re-listen. And if you get a chance, share it with someone who's in business. I really appreciate that, and perhaps pick up another regular listener to the Weekly Business Hour. Well, Dan, let's shift gears. Let's talk about book, 13ers. Talk about first, if you will, briefly about what motivated you to write this book, and particularly the 13%. I'm just very interested to understand that a little better.
Well, I don't know. I saw a lot of stuff happening after I sold my companies. I just saw a lot of people struggling. And I got invited in to be an advisor to a small company that was struggling with competition and how to stop being a commodity. And the company was here in Houston. It's a very unique company. They told me that they were art consultants. And what they were doing is they were going in and they were actually designing and putting together the interiors of hospitals. And so they would put together a presentation or a proposal, and then I saw him sit down and actually knock 10% off of the proposal. I said, why are you knocking 10% off that proposal? And he said, well, I really want the proposal, and I figure I can, maybe I can get it if I reduce the price. I said, well, that's kind of a fast track to the bottom, because now you're commoditizing yourself and you're competing on price. So let's look and see, what is it about this company that actually stands out? And the thing is that we began to understand what the weakness was of the marketplace. I mean, that doesn't even begin to talk about his weakness, but the weakness of the marketplace was that, and this is kind of interesting because you can discover this in any marketplace, but hospitals especially, it was very interesting that I didn't know, but my research told me that hospitals begin to lose money on the second day of a stay, of a patient stay. So what would you think you'd want to have happen? You'd want them out of there. So why don't hospitals, aren't they interested in keeping you long term? Well, because they begin to lose money on the second day. So that's a weakness so that we could speak to. And the interior, then why they were interested in this is that if you can create an environment that's healthy, that can get people well faster, and make the employees happy, which would translate into treatment of patients, you'd have a much more profitable hospital. So we began to go in that direction. And so we found the weakness. Now we had to deliver a signature experience. And we designed, so everybody in that industry would go, in competition, would go into a presentation with the board of a hospital, and they'd put up a PowerPoint, and they'd say, here's what we've done, here's all the things we could do, and here's the kind of art and all that stuff. And we watched that. I watched that, and I saw, that everybody was doing the same thing. So what we did was we got a box truck, and we loaded it up with art. And didn't matter where this presentation was, we had somebody drive that darn truck across country, and we'd unload the art, and we'd parade it through. We didn't do a PowerPoint. It took off. They just took off. They took over the industry just by shifting who they were being for those prospective clients, and they started getting business. So they call it they call it their signature experience. If you go on their website, the name of the company is Skyline Art Services. It's really a fabulous company. Anybody can go look at what they do. And if you look at their philosophy, they talk about this is the Skyline signature experience that we're delivering. So that's what it takes. It takes a understanding of a reverse salient, creating a category, delivering a signature experience. It's fairly simple. And to get into that, you've got to know what got you to where you are and create a new future.
Right.
So you have a strategy to execute.
Yeah, you got to rethink things, and I'm one of those that feel that one of the weaknesses in small businesses today, always has been, is that we don't have enough time or make time to really think about that kind of opportunity.
Right.
That's out there. We're busy running the business and getting those outdated P&Ls, as you mentioned earlier, and trying to make heads or tails out of them, and so on and so forth. So I think that's really interesting. Well, what is the significance of the 13%, though?
87%. That's the significance.
There's the reverse. Right?
Yeah. So it was the discovery of the 87%, failing to execute strategy. This is not my number. You can find it, David Norton, Harvard Business Review. It became pretty obvious that this is the problem. By that time, I had sold my home in Houston. And my wife and I moved up to our home in Colorado, thinking, well, I'm going to launch this book, and I'll just do it from Colorado, and I'll do something online, and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, turns out to be the adventure that wasn't quite the adventure I was looking for. But the book came out while I was up there, and it was interesting. I had a lot of radio interviews. I had a lot of things happen, including two of the summary companies, Get Abstract and summarized the book, and then it became bestseller and all that stuff. It was taken. The book was taken to the Frankfurt Book Fair, named one of the top 5 business books that year, English language business books in the world. So that kind of gave me an impetus to move forward, and Fox Business News invited me to come in, which is another whole story, but. I'm sitting. This is like crazy, but I'm sitting in New York City, down the street from Fox Business News, ready to go down, ready to get on the air and talk about my book. And all of a sudden, everything changes. On the television, there's a man coming down an escalator to talk about becoming president of the United States. I got trumped. That was it for me. Didn't
You
get on
literally
Fox.
got trumped,
I
right?
literally got trumped. No, that's the end of me on Fox Business News. So it's been an interesting experience. A lot of people have read the book. A lot of people have expressed a lot of appreciation for the information. I have to go read it once in a while to just refresh my memory. What the heck did I say here?
Well, what is the process? I mean, okay, I want to be a 13er, or
Okay.
I don't want to be an 87er.
Okay. Yeah.
What
You
is
don't want
the
to be
process?
87. Well, the process is a process of, as I've kind of mentioned, is trying to understand what it is first. The first step is always to understand how I got here. How did I get here? What was it? What was the thinking? And then realizing that this thinking, which creates what I call in the book a meme, which is, if you go back and look, it's really a weakness inside the company, and where the significant part of that is that when you see that weakness, it becomes an opportunity, because nothing happens that I have found, nothing significant happens without a gap, without there being something missing. What's the point? So we find the missing ingredient, and the missing ingredient is a conversation. And business is a conversation. That's all it is when you boil it down. It's just a conversation. And what we want to know is, what are the conversations that lead up to a company not being able to fulfill on its strategy and running into trouble, running up against the wall, as I say. And so if we could find that, that's a very, very big breakthrough. And it's a conversation, and it's negative. It limits them. It undermines their ability to move forward. And it's this aha moment. Okay, now we got this revealed. Now we've got to create a new place to stand. Well, what's the conversation that we want to have follow us? What do we want to follow? Where do we want to be? So we create a new place to stand by declaring who we are in the face of, here's how we've been being, and here's the conversation. It's called the hidden context also. I call it a meme, but it's a hidden context, and means a background conversation. So that's the first element of it. That's the first phase of it. Then we need to discover exactly what are the conversations that have led to the performance that we have, which are, it's pretty bad usually. And then looking at all the different, I'm kind of shortcutting this for time purposes, but we're looking at the key result areas of the company, and we're measuring that. So we need a measurement. We need another gap. So we ask, well, if we're going to perform and produce this extraordinary outcome that we say that we want, and we're going to operate at a 10 or 100, 10 being the high, what objectively, where are you operating now? Let's marketing, sales, manufacturing, whatever the key result areas of the company is, finance. Where do you think you're operating? What's the number? And when you create the number, you create the gap. So they say, well, we're doing marketing, we're at about a 4. Well, that's a 6 gap. That's a measured gap. We can see that. And now we can say, standing in the future, standing in the 10, what's missing? That if it wasn't missing, we'd be at a 10. We could say, we're really hitting all cylinders.
Right.
So that's the process, and
you
then
work-
we got to
you work
execute
to the
it.
You work to the gap.
Yeah, and so we got to put those missings into play, and so that's the strategy execution. So it's why do only 13% of companies execute their strategy? Well, really, it's why do 87% fail to execute their strategy?
Right.
And let's do something about that.
Well, I find that deeply interesting. I think it is a reality. It is a fact. And the idea, if folks listening, if it's improving your business. You want to boil it down to simple. It's improvement, working on improvement. But by the fact that you do have a roadmap and you determine your example, marketing, hey, I've got a gap. I've got 6 points I need to make up. Mm-hmm. And regardless of the scale that you use to evaluate it, but you identify and make up. And only 13% of the companies are hitting on all cylinders, and that makes sense. I mean, you can look at the stock market and you can look at their financials. There's all kinds of measuring sticks out there that are very important. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming in. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. You're welcome back anytime. If folks are interested in getting in touch with you or getting the book, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, I like people to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can just find me, Dan Prosser, Prosser, and find me there. And if you do that and connect with me, then I'll send you a free download book, the whole book, in a PDF, plus some other information. I'll even send the summaries so that people, if they don't want to read the whole book, just read the summary, and you can get a lot from that. And then if you find that interesting, get into the book. But they can find me on LinkedIn, and that's the best place to get the book. I have an assistant that monitors that all day long.
Okay, well, great. Again, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our final break of the day. When we come back, I'm going to offer you my one best consult tip of the week. How well did your customer service survive the pandemic? So please stay with us, and we'll have a little discussion of that to finish out the show today, and we'll be right back with you.
Second Saturday Divorce Workshop provides unbiased information to help you understand your options and move forward with your life. This divorce workshop is for you if you are contemplating divorce, in the process of divorce, already filed for divorce, or post-divorce. You will explore the emotional, legal, and financial aspects of divorce from professionals who have guided others through divorce. For more information on this divorce workshop, contact SecondSaturdayWoodlands.com or call 832-375-0900.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
What is homelessness? Have you seen parents struggle to find a job without having transportation or childcare? What about the children sleeping in cars with nothing to eat? Families shouldn't have to struggle to survive, and children should not be homeless. Family Promise of Montgomery County serves the needs of homeless families and their children. Learn about ways you can help and learn about partnership opportunities at www.familypromiseofmc.org or call our day center at 936-441-8778.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyper-local audience in Montgomery County? Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out irlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776.
You are listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schissler, I'm your host. And again, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dan Prosser, and I encourage you to reach out and check out his book, 13ers. Interesting word, 13ers, but don't be the flip side of the 13. Don't be the 87% who don't ever really get there with their business. Well, I promised you I'd talk about one best consult tip of the week. How well did your customer service survive the pandemic? A lot of things were affected by the pandemic in business, no doubt about it. And if your business was shut down, you really were affected. But most businesses that I can tell were able to stay in business and stay actively serving their customers. But realities for most of us were that business dropped. Some cases it didn't, but most of us it dropped. And when it dropped, we lost touch with the things, in many cases, that are really, really important to our business. And one of those could have been your customer service. I talked to a lot of small business people. They had to cut back. They had to cut employees. because the revenue wasn't there. And unfortunately, sometimes, it's a difficult choice. That when you have a process that depends on certain people to do certain things, such as customer service, and you cut one or more of them out of the process, that process can weaken, or it will weaken, and potentially it can fail. So a couple of things I want to just kind of regenerate that conversation about customer service. Give you a few what I call factoids. First of all, consumers, and this is assuming you sell to consumers, not business, are 2 times more likely to share their bad customer service stories and experience than the good ones. Well, I know that's a fact, because when I get mistreated, I just want to talk about it, right? But I also, in my case, when I'm treated exceptionally well, I love to tell the story, but that's because of my involvement and love of business. So you do something wrong, people are twice as likely to talk about it. And you need to keep that in mind whenever you put your customer service process together or review it. 63% of U.S. customers say they stopped doing business with a particular business brand due to poor customer service experience. 63% of people have walked away from one or more businesses, brands that they were doing business with because they were unhappy. You've got to make sure that your customer service channels are open and working at the highest levels, and it's something just like any other process, manufacturing, service, whatever in your business, it's got to be running at the highest level day in and day out. And the last but not least, on the factoids, for every customer complaint, and this number's kind of gone up over the years. It used to be one would complain and 9 would walk away and not say a word. Well, now they say there are 26 other unhappy customers for every one that actually tells you they're unhappy. So that means 26 people just somehow disappear. And it happens, I think, to almost every business. And I've been that type of customer before. I got unhappy and I just walked away, didn't order again. So I think that's important. $41 billion, according to socialmediatoday.com, $41 billion has walked away from your businesses, okay? Small businesses, large businesses, medium-sized businesses here in the United States. One of the things that I really want to make sure is you realize, and it's important, that customer service is just not about retaining customers, but it affects the retention of your employees. Now take a second and absorb that. If you have a business that pays attention consistently to your customers, you're going to have better employees. On one side, you're going to need the better employees in order to keep that customer service retention up. And on the flip side, let me tell you, and just think about it, people want to work for a business that is successful. The best people want to work for a business that is successful. So if you want to attract the best employees at all levels, then you need to have a business that takes care of its customers, among other things. But think about that. That's a powerful statement and one that I personally adhere to. Building a better business, one part of it is customer service, and it's not just taking care of the complaints, it's taking care of the employees and making sure they serve the customer at the highest levels. A positive experience with your company is good for everyone involved, and you too can enjoy that experience. So I think it's important to remember that. As we close out the program today, I also want to remind you that we've got a series coming up. Patrick Wilk, director of the McNair Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise, is going to be bringing us The Heart of the Hustle. So keep an eye on our programming because we're going to start running those in the near future. The Heart of the Hustle, which will be interviews with well-known entrepreneurs, how they made their business work, how they avoided certain mistakes, and how they corrected those they made. So very inspirational and I think very educational. The Heart of the Hustle. Look for it. Thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you will seek to join our community with your business and look for a video cast of today's program on the Weekly Business Hour page at irlonestar.com, onebestconsult.com, Facebook, YouTube, and all the other popular social media outlets. And also, I encourage you, stay in touch with what's happening here in Montgomery County, right here on Lone Star Community Radio. And until next week, I encourage you, stay engaged and keep your focus on what counts in your business. Thanks.